Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is 6 questions for building a great business. When it comes to being in an open, peer-driven discussion about running your business, you should always be willing to answer the questions you pose. So when Small Giants community member Jim Mullaney of eDoc Service in Cincinnati, Ohio, posed 6 questions about running a business from a Small Giants perspective, we weren't going to let him get away with not answering those questions about his own work. How do Jim's answers compare to yours? Keep listening. Okay, here we go.
Welcome to the eDoc corporate headquarters, world headquarters, which actually, believe it or not, excuse me, we're sitting in the basement of my home.
Nice.
This is our office. I do have a small conference room here, and the 3 of us plus others get together in this room from time to time. But quite often when we have off-site meetings, we'll do it at locations. My name is Jim Mullaney, and I'm president and CEO of eDoc Service. We've been in business, almost 20 years. We'll be 19 years in March. Sitting on my right is Tina Wildy. She's been with us 16 of those 19 years. And sitting on my left is Kim Sykes. And she's going on 2 years with us in the company. We, as far as external offices go, we have 10 employees, so we have 10 external offices. And we're also spread out over, I believe, 6 states. I could be wrong with that number. I'll 5 states, okay. I'll be reminded tax time because there's such a thing as Nexus. And every time we have an employee in another state, we have to corporate return in that state. Drives crazy. But thank God for CPAs that take care of those things.
Yes.
So that's who we are. We're virtual. We don't have to worry about that 20 or 45-minute commute. My commute to work is getting out of bed in the morning, which is pretty cool. So anyway, we're going to talk about the questions that we laid out in our blog a month or 2 ago about the culture of being a small giant and the 7 questions that we need to address and kind of a litmus test for small giants. First question we have on that is are you building your company to last forever or rather than to flip and sell? So are you building your company to last? And from an eDoc service perspective, that is our desire. There's no desire in my mind to sell this company. I would like to see this company last forever. Now, having said that, we as a company are on a 10-year plan. It just happens to be an age thing for me. I look at my age and I'm thinking we probably have 10 years to really get grounded and to get in a position where the company can be totally self-sustaining, stabilized, and ready for some kind of transition, which would be premature to talk about. We're focused on the next 10 years really having our company grounded. And I think we're on the right path. This is my executive team, and I think that we've got good staff. So we as a company have no desire to flip and sell. I'm not interested in becoming rich and moving off to Florida and saying, thanks guys, see you later. That isn't what we're about. We're about building the company to last. So that is that question. So.
The next question we have is, do you value your staff for helping build your company? And in the many years that I've been with eDoc, we do not believe in salespeople. We believe in more or less the knowledge workers, if you will, selling the company. It's more about information sharing and not about selling. And who better to help to build your company than those people who are working in it and know what goes on daily to help talk about what's going on. And we don't have an 800 customer service number. If you have problems with the programs that we have or something of that nature, you would call me or Kim to get that resolved. And we're not salespeople, we're not customer service people. We are working in the company and we help grow it as well as any of our staff members. We encourage them to sell or to help to grow as well.
So the next question is, are you driven by passion for purpose and principles ahead of cash profit? So absolutely, EDOC is driven by purpose. One of the first things I learned about EDOC was actually our purpose, which is to transform the landscape of corporate America through innovative business services and through authenticity. And hearing that right off the bat and knowing that I could be a part of a company that was values driven and purpose driven, I knew that was a company I wanted to work for and wanted to contribute to. You can actually see on the wall by Tina, we have all our purpose statement, so our principles all listed out. Anyone that comes on board at EDOC is fully aware. We make sure they genuinely are aligned with our purpose. And we even have that same list of purpose and principles right on our website, so everyone knows where that's at, and even our partners access that, and we share that with them before working with them.
The next question that we addressed was, are you motivated toward partnering with clients and providing service excellence? When we approach a client, we want to make sure that it is a partnership. If the client is interested more in working with a vendor than a true partner, we generally walk away. If we don't feel that we're going to be able to make a difference in their company and help them build their company, we're not interested in doing business with them. So we insist on partnering with our clients, and that has worked very well for us. We have a client down in Miami, and before I met them face to face, we were in a contract back and forth. Them taking the contract to their attorneys, me being forced to take it to my attorney, and finally I said, this is ridiculous. We were building a document platform for them where doctors would be able to sign their documents online rather than using the fax service and forcing them to try and chase down their doctors. So I flew down to Miami, I sat down with them, and I said, folks, I understand what your problem is. We're here to solve the problem. And this business of going back and forth with this contract is getting a little old. And based on that meeting, they said, Jim, you're right, the contract is done. And so this has been a true partnership for the last 3 years that we've been working with that company. And that's the way we approach companies. We want to partner with them and make a difference and not just be a vendor.
Jim, when you're approaching, question. Jim, when you're approaching that type of relationship with potentially a new vendor, how, you had to go down and have a meeting with somebody in Miami to get that message across.
Right.
In general, how are you communicating that to a vendor, and at what level of pushback do you wash your hands of it and say, you know what, this isn't the right relationship for us?
We've walked away from a number of prospective clients over the years for various reasons, but that would be the number one. We just brought on a new client, Glenn, here in Cincinnati, and Tina is working with them now. It's Children's Hospital. And interesting enough, there was a survey that was published just in last week's Business Courier, Cincinnati Business Courier, listing the largest employers in Cincinnati. And it surprised me that Children's Hospital is #1. So for the most part, the companies we deal with are small to mid-sized companies. However, the largest client that we have had to date is a medical transcription company. I'm sorry, we're doing medical transcription business for this medical company, and that's our largest client. When we started working with them, Glenn, they had a small office in a city right next to us here in Fairfield, Ohio. And there was just a few doctors. We were doing a little bit of medical transcription. They liked the work that we did. They introduced us to their corporate people down in Fort Lauderdale. And we were offered an opportunity to do medical transcription for that office. And then they brought on their Orlando office, and then Miami, and then other offices, to the point where now we have that entire company across the U.S. And we have a very close relationship with those medical directors in that large corporation. And we are making a difference for them. We actually built the platform in conjunction with their IT department. We partnered with their IT department to build the platform to be able to have the document flow to their specifications and the ability for doctors to sign online. And they were asking us to allow them to pay for some of the development work on that. And we said, no, we are going to pay for that ourselves. So this was a way that we have added value to their company. They, prior to our going in and doing work for them, they had their own in-house transcription company, or not company, their own in-house transcription department. And it turned out, I guess those ladies that worked in that department were becoming prima donnas. And they were making a lot of demands. They could never get caught up on their work. And as soon as they started doing business with us, they fired that entire department. And what they found was, even though they paid us a higher rate, at least they thought, per line, they're paying us per line instead of paying workers by the hour, they were paying far less in using our services than what they were using with their own people. So by outsourcing, they ended up saving a lot of money, and they found that the work that they were getting from our people was far superior than what they were getting in-house. So that is a very large corporation that we're doing medical transcription for. So back to Children's Hospital. That is the largest single employer in all of Cincinnati. It's bigger than Procter & Gamble. It's bigger than Kroger. It's bigger than UC Hospital, and on. Companies I thought would have been bigger. But the way we're partnering with them, Glenn, is we're starting with one small department. And Tina is working very closely with the head of that department, and they're doing interviews with parents, for children that are being serviced there at the hospital. So we're going to do a good job in that department. I don't know where it's going to lead from there, but needless to say, we have a very entrenched medical transcription platform that we could serve them and serve them very well. So the opportunity is huge. Does that kind of answer the question, how we partner?
Yeah, and I've got a little bit more that I want to try and figure out about it. How much of that is just ingrained in who you are as a company? And when it comes to developing that relationship from a practical perspective and you can use the Children's Hospital as an example. How much of that is because this is who eDoc's service is, and how much does that relationship develop because of how you codify that for them? How you present that to them? Or is it just, you know what, this is who we are, and people end up loving us because of how we treat them and how we interact with them?
Yeah, I think it's more on the side of that's who we are. And Tina, you've worked with them directly. I mean, is there another way you would phrase it?
That's exactly who we are. We don't know any other way of treating people or expecting to be treated. Really, it's a partnership.
You know, when we first started working with our client down in Fort Lauderdale, I would fly down there from time to time and just take a couple of the key people to lunch. That's all I did, including they have an administrative headquarters down in Miami, and I would go down there and I would take the accounts payable guy out to lunch. And amazingly enough, our bill always ended up on the top of his pile. And during those early days, cash flow was pretty critical to our company, so it was pretty important that we got paid quickly. But that's how the relationship started, and it just grew from there. But we will not work for a company as a vendor. That isn't who we are. If we're not making a difference in the company, it doesn't excite me.
Gotcha. That's fantastic. I've got more questions about this for after we're done with the main part of the discussion, but I didn't want to interrupt you too much. So please go back to the 6 questions. So.
Okay.
So Jim was discussing partnering with clients, and the next question is, do you insist on the same for your suppliers? And absolutely we do. We used to work with another IT company some time ago, and at one point in time, if you see the column there by Kim, behind it was an entire rack of servers, and a gentleman would come out, he would service them, do what he had to do, and he was just trying to upsell us all the time, but never really took the time to, what do you really need, or what is it about, how can we help you? And we found another IT company to work with where they are really partnering with us to the extent of earlier this week, last week, I had a conference call with them on a certain program that we're using, and they're like, really, this is clunky. We can charge you to do whatever it is we need to do to the system, but really, you need to switch to another system where you're not going to be taking up our time, and I say that loosely, but they're trying to look out for our bottom line. Like, we can keep using this and we can keep charging you a whole bunch of money, but if you were to use another system, it would be more helpful for you, more streamlined, and you're not paying us a bunch of money to work with it. That's one example. And then even with our payroll, we were using a very big payroll company. It's a national company, but they had a lot of turnover. We had a salesperson that was local, but we didn't have a direct contact, somebody that could help us. And if we needed help with payroll, oh, you need this person. If you need help with 401k, oh, that's another department completely. And we switched over to a new local payroll company where this gentleman is partnering so much. He was partnering with us before he even had our business or knew that there was potential to have our business. And, and working locally with him, he's the president of the company. If we have something that's important, we can go to him and know that it's going to get taken care of right away. And he's working with us on our electronic signature platform to help us grow that, and we're going to help him grow his payroll company at the same time. So that's kind of, how we want to partner with our suppliers as well as our clients.
So the next question is, do you trust your staff enough to share financial information, allowing them to grow as entrepreneurs? So we actually have an open books policy, or non-policy, but we have open books, and we've actually been an open book company since day one. So having the ability for anyone to see where we are as far as how profits are coming in, where costs are going. We actually can see each other's salaries, so everyone here, we have that part of our financial statements open to each other. So it's empowering because you can see, hey, here's the project I'm owning, here's the impact I'm having on the bottom line. And even on the flip side, maybe you see an area where you feel you can help the company in another division. So the idea of having open books for us helps each person be entrepreneurial or an intrapreneur, if you will, just because we're better able to see how our role fits within the company, the big picture, and also just the actual place we're having an impact on the bottom line. So having that transparency it's great for our culture. And Jim.
And just what about your company? Do you folks have open book?
You beat me to the question, Jim.
The financial statements inside your company?
At the executive level leadership right now, yes. That is definitely something I've actually noticed that in a bunch of the things I've been reading lately with the small giants companies is this concept of the open books. We don't have it full company, no.
Jim, were you always open book management, or was that something that came along into the system?
Always. We've always been open book. From day one. When I left Marriott, Glenn, I went to work for a staffing company for about 4 years. It was a family-owned company, and they kept the numbers so close to the breast that nobody in the company knew what was going on. And as an accountant myself, I found that so frustrating. And I just made up my mind when I started this company, we were always going to be open book. And I just think it's great because it's really teaching your people to be entrepreneurs by sharing the numbers with them. And to me, helping your people become entrepreneurs, I can't think of a better gift or a better environment that you could give to your employees than allowing them to learn to become entrepreneurs. Because think about it, if they learn to become entrepreneurs, they'll always have a job. Whether they're working for us as a company or whatever, they'll always have a job as long as they know how to be entrepreneurs. So I just think that's a way of training your people the ultimate, so to speak.
Jim, can you give us an example from that open book management perspective of a contribution that I use the phrase average employee, but somebody that isn't necessarily in that leadership has been able to make to the overall health of the organization, and how you fostered that, how you helped to take that from an idea to an actual policy or practice?
Yeah, that's a question that maybe I'd have to ponder a little bit, Glenn.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't know if he wants me to use this example, so you can fire me later. So I'm going to say, and he actually talked about this at the dinner that we had, because he had us all go around and talk about a challenge that we've had in our business world. And so when I was first hired on at eDoc Service, I was not on an executive team. I don't know that he would have called it that per se. I was an employee. I was a team manager, but he was very, and this is like the extreme, but he was very honest about, look, the financials kind of didn't turn out the way that I thought that they would, and here's what's going to happen with payroll for the next month and a half or whatever. And a lot of companies are not going to go to you and say, here's what's going on. And he was very open and honest about what had happened and what was going on. And And those of us who really cared about the company and really felt strongly in the company, we stayed with the company. And we worked through it. And he was very honest about, okay, here's where we're getting better, we're getting better, we're getting better. And all the way till now, even a few years ago when we actually had become debt free. And, at that time I was just an employee, but he did not hide anything that was going on. He could have easily just said, I'm going to fire all of you and not said why, but he explained it, and he's always been very trusting and honest in that way. I mean, that's probably an extreme example, but
that is a good example. The fact was, Glenn, we ran out of cash.
I was trying to sugarcoat it a little bit, but
I'm an accountant, right?
There's no sugarcoating in open book management, right? It's all there.
Payroll this week, and I couldn't get any bank to lend me any more money, and I had to go to the staff and say, "Hey, folks, we've got a crisis, and I can't pay anybody for the next 6 weeks, and I'd like you to stay." And all but one stayed. We had one new employee that bailed out, but everybody else stayed, and we got through it. But that was a scary time.
I own my own house now. Like, it clearly didn't kill me. It's just one of those. It's a growing opportunity.
Open book management seems to really be a foundation element for being a successful small giant. That high level of communication. When you brought in employees, but it's not the standard for everybody. When you're sitting in an interview and you say, we're an open book management company, how do you communicate to somebody that's coming from an environment that's not open book management what the value of that style of communication is? How do you get people on board to that thinking and that process?
Well, Glenn, that isn't something that's really a primary discussion point when we hire somebody. That's something they'll find out once they're on board. What we're doing in the hiring process is looking to see if they fit our purpose and principles. If they don't buy into our purpose and buy into our culture, then we're not interested in having them on board. And I even share this with our clients when we help them on the virtual side. I tell them, hire for culture first and skills second. I would rather teach them the skills and have the right person than to have somebody who's skilled that doesn't buy into the culture. So we put a lot of emphasis on that culture. And we saw that when we went on that, passport. We went on that passport to Nick's Pizza and Pub. The amount of time, effort, and energy that they put into interviewing their people for culture. So I think that's an important element for us. But as far as talking about open book, I just don't even mention it. I mean, it's not something I hide, but that isn't something we really talk about until they're on board. And then when they're on board, they see the numbers, maybe they're shocked at it, but, well, that's the way it goes.
The type of person you're bringing in is...
It shows trust.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Fantastic. So I'll let you continue on going through the question.
Yeah, the last question that was on our list is, are you a servant leader? Who can answer yes to this and all the questions above? In other words, are you a servant leader? And for that, I mean, speaking for myself, I feel like I am a servant leader. I've got Kim and Tina here that are running separate divisions. There are times that there'll be a project in the works and I'm working for them. They're not working for me. Tina may be, have a special project going on and she'll call me up and say, Jim, I need you to do this. And I will drop what I'm doing and suddenly I'm working for Tina. So that makes me a servant as much as a leader. And I think that that's a very important position to take. And both Kim and Tina would say the same thing. There are times when your team is in the weeds or something, and you're working for Martha or you're working for one of the QA people. That's the kind of attitude I think we have to have as small giants. We're not just the person in charge all the time.
Gotcha. So when it comes to kind of flipping those roles around, does it again go back to just this culture is so ingrained, who you are so ingrained that you don't have to have any kind of specific communication process for that, or is it just what, this is what we need today, this is who we are, and this is how we work?
Yeah. And this is what really attracted me to Small Giants, Glenn, because a lot of those components that Small Giants preaches was in place here, not all of them. But what Small Giants has been able to do for us as a company is really put words around what we're doing and also help us enhance our culture in ways I hadn't thought of before. Posting our purpose and principles, not just on the wall, but on the website. When we went to Nick's Pizza and Pub on that passport trip, and also, Tom, Walter, and his Tasty Catering, they've got the purpose and principles plastered all over the wall in their shop. And, that motivated me to really not only post it, but really put this out to the people and reinforce the purpose and principles that we've had. Because sometimes, when it's easy to get away from it. So everybody knows what the purpose is, but Small Giants has really helped in that regard.
Has there been any, you mentioned that you're already kind of doing a lot of things that would have fallen under the Small Giant mindset, and we're trying to run a great business. When you started looking at it from the Small Giants, again, putting words around it, were there any difficulties in figuring out how those applied into certain elements of the business? Was it something that once you overlaid it, started looking through that lens, that it made a lot of sense? How did you start talking about Small Giants in kind of the day-to-day of how you work?
Well, Glenn, I'm more of a visionary than I am an integrator. That's another thing I learned at the Small Giants Summit a few months ago. The visionary and integrator. So, from my perspective, what I see, I pick up on what fits. Rather than, I can't think of anything that Small Giants has brought to the table that I had difficulty getting in place. But what it has done is reinforced and given me heightened awareness and just more of a drive to get these principles in place. Being the visionary, if I was more of an integrator, there might be some things I would be fighting, but I always just key on the positive aspects, and if there's anything that's, that just doesn't look right, then I just don't deal with it. So.
I like that. Doesn't look right, just don't deal with it. It seems like by having the type of person that you have inside of the company, that's a very rare occurrence, because just everything's consistent across the board with the values of the people that are working for you.
Yeah. We had one person on board that was fairly high level that gave a little bit of pushback from time to time, but she's not with us anymore. So, I guess, eventually when you have the right purpose and principles in the company, the folks that are not on board with the culture will eventually leave. And we've got a good team culture also. So I guess if a wrong person gets on the team, they'll have a tribal council. And
Well, that's a great point there, Jim. Is that you had somebody that was giving you pushback? How did you decide to, at what point did you say, you know what, like enough's enough. This is how we are. This is who we are, and this is the right fit. And or how much do you, because they're a good person or they're a good worker in that sense, how much do you push to say, how much and how do you push to give them that opportunity to really kind of fall in line with this mindset of how everybody else is working?
yeah, well, in this particular case, I just never gave up. I just always tried to impress, what we were doing, and then she did something a little out of line, so that made it easy to make the cut. So, but that's a story for another day.
Well, I mean, opting yourself out, either by word or action, is very much a reality for small giants businesses and people that don't line up. I mean, because again, with culture and values are so consistent, somebody isn't, going along with the party line. It stands out, and it's very easy to point to that and say why that it's wrong for the organization. So I mean, that's opting yourself out by doing something you shouldn't be doing is a great way to deal with a values-based organization.
Yeah. Candace, you've been with your company quite a few years, and you are in charge of culture. What are you finding in that position? Do you feel like you're steering the Titanic, or do things pretty much come in line? The people above you, are they all on board with your thoughts, ideas, and actions? What are you seeing?
For us, it is kind of an ebb and flow. I think that's one of the reasons we've kind of done this, get involved with Small Giants. We've done some other things. Is our company's gone through quite a shift in the last, I would say, couple years, with some changes at the top and some realignment. And so this past year has been more of a year of getting back to who we were at the core and back to the original culture, where we were straying away from it for a while. So what I will say, learning through that experience is, if you don't constantly have your eye on the target, it's really easy to get distracted and to go off course.
Yeah, part of one of our service offerings is to help companies move from a brick and mortar environment to a virtual culture. Mm-hmm. That's what we have figured out over the years. We've always been virtual from day one. People thought I was crazy 19 years ago starting this idea, but what we have learned is that going virtual, allowing people to work in remote locations, and many companies, if not most, are kind of a hybrid, where you have people mm-hmm. working from home and others that are on site. But it's really more about culture than it is about technology. And the companies that are moving in that direction, for whatever reason, tend to be focused on the technology. But if they don't have the right culture in place, yeah. risk disconnecting those remote workers from the company. And yeah. that's what we bring to the table. But I've got to say, it is really frustrating, because I'm just not patient enough with trying to get people to buy into the right culture to make that happen. So that's a struggle I have in working with others, trying to mm-hmm. get to see it like we mm-hmm. see it. How many times have I heard someone say, well, Jim, what you do, that works great, but that would never work here. Well, Yeah, I think it would. But
Yeah, why not?
yeah.
Right.
So Candace, from kind of this small giants framework, where do you feel your pain points are with kind of moving forward with taking Pegasus Logistics and just really operating with this mindset? Is it there's a culture issue, or is it something that you're feeling as an organization like, this framework is really going to work for us? We just need kind of more practices and more application. I mean, how's it working around your organization?
I think that I love the framework. I think the framework's great, and I think many pieces work very well for us. One of our pain points that we have right now is we're in a high growth mode, and I wrote some notes as you were talking that one of the biggest challenges we have is the cultural fit when you're in an interview, and for many years, we would have people interview, and when they looked for culture, they looked for people who liked shenanigans. And having fun and being able to, be silly does not mean you fit our culture. And so right now, what we're really trying to hone in on is being able to articulate the culture very well, everyone having, excuse me, the same description of what the core values mean. So we're going through some exercises right now where we're taking our core values and we're actually putting some meat behind each one of the sentences so that people understand them or interpret them the same every time. And then layering into that, when you're interviewing someone, how do you interview them and make sure they fit the culture without giving the culture to them and saying, does that work for you, yes or no? That's very challenging for us. So my curious question to you is, when you said we're interviewing for culture, that's the most important thing. How are you uncovering that?
Yeah, so when Jim and I met up the first time after originally meeting at a networking event, so it was like a educational morning breakfast networking event. We met up after that, and we just had if I had to guess, I would say, would you say an hour and a half? We just sat and talked about where EDOC had been, why Jim started the company, the current state of the company, and one of the, like I was saying earlier, one of the first things we also went over was those purpose and principles. And because of my prior work history, those really resonated with me. And I could speak to, I don't think I spoke to every single, principle, but I could have talked for hours about it. So I think we just had a good, genuine conversation, nothing forced, and we could relate in that way. So it wouldn't have, I wouldn't have called that an interview. You probably wouldn't have either. So that's how for me that situation occurred.
At the risk of oversimplifying, that's the first litmus test that I like to present to a new employee coming on board or an applicant. I'll show them the purpose and principles. We have it it's a one-page document. You can see it, it's attached to our website. And I'll ask them to take just a couple of minutes and read that. And I'll ask the question, what do you think about that? See anything there that interests you, or what questions? And then I will get one of two reactions. Either they'll light up and say, this is pretty cool, or they'll glaze over. If they glaze over, they're probably not going to make the cut. So
sure.
Litmus test,
Mm-hmm.
Are you excited about this culture that you see here, or this is this is way out there. I don't know that I want to be part of this, or, if the body language doesn't fit, then that's not a good first impression.
Jim, I'll actually echo that sentiment. This comes from bringing people into the Small Giants community itself, of saying, like, by leading with that value set, like, here are the 6 things that Small Giants lead themselves with. People either love it or they loathe it. There's no, like, milquetoast feeling about it. So it hits spot on what you say. They either glaze over or they're all about it. And by putting that right up front, it really clears out, whether they have the skills or anything else, putting those values, because that's what drives you every day. That's the foundation of your company, of your individual person, of every relationship. If you lead up front and put those big and bold, it'll turn the people off that it should turn off that you don't want in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of another recommendation when it comes from this, from a hiring perspective. And I'll shoot you the link for our ebook download that's on hiring specifically. Is that
one that came out last week?
No, there was one that came out about 4 months ago.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make sure you get the link for that. Small Giants tend to have a high dependency on the referral. Who has sent you that person? And I'm really interested to maybe find another time to tackle this in a high growth mode, where you're needing to bring in a lot of people. How can you get enough of the right referrals? Because the same way that it comes to people that you want to do business with, if Jim sends me somebody, I have an extremely high confidence factor in who that person is as a person, fundamentally. And that, if by placing a Tom Walter of Tasty Catering, they've made the bid that they haven't advertised for a job in like 25 years. And almost everybody that comes and works for that organization is a referral of some type. So they're letting their friends and their relationships do a lot of that work for them before they even get in the door. And it helps you don't have to spend time going through, if you're looking for two of the right candidates and you have an ad that you put in the newspaper and it brings everybody in because it's a job that pays, versus bringing in 3 candidates that you know exactly who they are before they ever say a word because of who's bringing them to you. That really solves that pain point. Is something that I hear a lot from members of the community. So we've got like 3 minutes left. So first, let me ask Jim, is there any kind of small steps that you'd recommend for anybody that's putting the Small Giants glasses on towards applying these questions to their business? What's the first couple of things they should do?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the best thing anybody can do is go on a passport and get to know other Small Giants and be able to see what is actually happening out there. That was I joined Small Giants anyway, and that was the first event I went to was in Chicago. But that really solidified the relationship with me, is going on that first passport.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.